Dober večer in lepo pozdravljeni. Po več uspešno izpeljanih popoldnevih korporativne integritete, po uspešnem zagonu projekta slovenskih smernic korporativne integritete in po uspešni izpeljani akademiji je sledilo nekaj premora. Ampak v leto 2017 smo stopili polni novih idej in prepričana sem, da bomo ob vaši podpori, ki jo izkazujete z vašo udeležbo, ponovno potisnili ta projekt korporativne integritete v zagon. Hvala vam za podporo, hvala za udeležbo že vnaprej, hvala vsem partnerjem korporativne integritete in hvala ekonomski fakulteti, ki je od vsega začetka gonilna sila razvoja tega projekta. Gospa dekanja, profesor Metka Tekavčič, beseda je vaša.
Hvala lepa, gospa Latanja. Dragi gostje, spoštovani udeleženci popoldneva namenjenega korporativni integriteti v praksi, drage sodelavke in sodelavci, zelo sem vesela, da vas lahko pozdravim ob današnjem za nas zelo pomembnem dogodku. Ni lepo, če tisti, ki prvi spregovori, najprej pove, da se bo za dogodek upravičil, ker morda s tem ustvarja vtis, da mu ni pomemben. Pa vendarle je meni ta dogodek zelo pomemben in zato se mi zdi pomembneje, da sem tudi se lahko upravičim ter vas vseeno pozdravim, zakaj me ne bo ob 5. uri bi morala že začeti predavanja za naše izredne študente. Gre za zadnje predavanje pred izpitom in nikakor ga ne morem preložiti. Kolegica, za katero pa smo predvidevali, da me bo nadomestila, pa je zbolela, tako da moram to delo preprosto opraviti. Sama, glede na to, da imam predavanja do 8:30 zvečer, boste verjetno vi prej končali kot jaz, tako da se vam ob koncu ne bom mogla pridružiti. Zahvaljujem se vsem, ki ste se udeležili našega projekta in različnih oblik dela v okviru tega projekta. Za nas, ekonomsko fakulteto, je vprašanje korporativne integritete izjemno pomembno. Morda bo kdo porekal, kaj se pa greste, ko ste bili javno tako izpostavljeni. In ravno zaradi tega se mi zdi še toliko bolj pomembno, da poudarimo, da se mi nikoli nismo, se ne in se ne bomo skrivali pred nikakršno odgovornostjo. Mi želimo delovati transparentno in tako tudi delujemo. Vendar pa hkrati vemo, da to pomeni tudi, da moramo delovati v korektnem okolju. V okolju, ko lahko korektno in temeljito ter utemeljeno predstavimo svoje argumente in to ne velja samo za nas, ampak za vse, ki delujemo v določenem družbenem okolju in smo vpeti v poslovni prostor neke države in širše globalne skupnosti. Zato je za nas, ekonomsko fakulteto, še toliko bolj pomembno, da lahko poudarimo, da skupaj vsemi z vami, ki ste naši pomembni poslovni partnerji na različnih področjih, ustvarjamo kakovostno poslovno-ekonomsko šolo, ki daje našim študentom zelo zanimivo in pestro ter v vsakem primeru raznoliko in kakovostno študijsko izkušnjo v okolju, v katerem lahko od vas, naših poslovnih partnerjev, črpamo ideje o tem, kaj naj bo predmet našega raziskovanja in hkrati skupaj z vami to raziskujemo ter ustvarjamo novo znanje, ki ga potem tudi prenašamo v poslovno prakso. In dovolite mi, da vam povem, da smo prav v lanskem letu, kljub težkemu družbenemu okolju za našo fakulteto doma, ne pa v tujini, postali trojno akreditirana šola v širši regiji edina takšna šola na področju poslovnega izobraževanja, kar našim študentom in študentkam odpira pot na izmenjave v najboljše poslovne šole na svetu. Mi smo na ta dosežek zelo ponosni, to je ključno, kar smo dosegli v lanskem letu. Dosegli smo z izjemnim prizadevanjem in odpovedovanjem tudi vseh naših sodelavcev in sodelavk in v svetu trojno akreditiranih šol se nam čudijo, ker smo šola z najnižjim budžetom, daleč najnižjim budžetom, ki je to dosegla. Zato se vam zahvaljujem, da nam pri tem pomagate, da nam zaupate, da se udeležujete naših aktivnosti, ki potekajo bodisi neposredno pod okriljem Ekonomske fakultete ali pa našega Centra za poslovno odličnost. Še enkrat hvala, želim vam ustvarjalno popoldne in se vam zahvaljujem za razumevanje, da vas bom sedaj zapustila.
Najlepša hvala. Je dobro, da je na fakulteti vedno dovoljenih akademskih 15, se pravi, boste še vedno pravočasno. Hvala lepa. Na mnoga vprašanja bomo odgovorili v letu 2017, ki so vezana na področja korporativne integritete. Danes se bomo dotaknili vprašanja, kdo je lastnik tveganja skladnosti in kaj se zgodi takrat, ko lahko v enem dnevu izgubimo tisto, kar smo gradili desetletje ali več let. To je ugled. Pričakujemo oziroma načrtujemo vsaj še 2 popoldneva korporativne integritete in izvedbo akademije. Vsebinsko bomo nadaljevali tudi pri razvoju smernic. Za sodelovanje se moram danes posebej zahvaliti vsem sodelujočim v okrogli mizi, posebej dr. Sandri Damjan, ki je pravzaprav njena zamisel. I would like to say warm welcome to our special guest, Mr. Lameho from France. He made our morning so exciting because at 9 we got a message that his flight was cancelled. So it was a kind of organizational issue, but as you can see, we made it and warmly welcome at the Faculty of Economics. Warm and thank you, really huge thank you to PwC, to Mr. Sandvi for all your support, and of course thank you for all today's guests and participants, especially to Mr. Kos, who is with us from the beginning of the project. Okrogla miza bo potekala v slovenščini, so dear guests who cannot understand Slovenian language, Sandra will somehow help with understanding. We decided that we will run this round table in Slovene language. Predlagam, da začnemo. Dr. Sandra Damjan, prosim za uvodno predstavitev tematike.
Spoštovani gostje, dober dan in dobrodošli na peto popoldne za korporativno integriteto. Lepo pozdravljeni seveda tudi v mojem imenu. Monika je že uvodoma omenila temo današnjega popoldneva, sicer kdo je lastnik tveganja skladnosti. Osnovne vprašanja, o katerih bomo govorili, se vrtijo okrog tega, da v bistvu kaj naredimo, ko gredo stvari narobe in se soočamo s kršitvami skladnosti poslovanja, kje iščemo tiste vzroke, ali kažemo s prstom na druge, ali pa iščemo vzroke pri sebi. In seveda ena izmed najpomembnejših zadev je, ko se to zgodi, kako potem popraviti ta sistem in odpraviti nastalo škodo in povrniti ugled družbe. Zdaj, ko govorimo o integriteti in ko pride do kršitev integritete, zelo pogosto oziroma zelo hitro pokažemo s prsti na druge ali pa krivimo, da smo imeli slabe notranje kontrole, da nekaj je šlo narobe, da sistem je postavljen prav tako, kot je treba. Dejstvo pa je, da v praksi temu ni tako. Zelo pogosto imamo samo formalno spostavljene mehanizme in pa ko pride do kršitev, se to potem tudi pokaže. Ne samo z krnitvijo ugleda, ampak tudi z finančnimi posledicami in pa še kakšnimi drugimi posledicami. Današnja tema ni čisto naključno izbrana. V bistvu dejstvo je, da finančni škandali in pa kršitve korporativne integritete se še vedno dogajajo. Spravi, to ni bilo samo v času tiste ključnega momenta, ko se je zgodila kriza, ko se je to vse izpostavilo, ampak se to dogaja tudi danes, že nekaj let potem, in to ni niti novost za Slovenijo. Tudi v naših medijih je možno vsakodnevno zaslediti kakšne kršitve, ki se dogajajo v družbah. Zdaj, pri vseh teh zadevah se seveda pojavi vprašanje, kaj botruje temu trendu. ali so kršitve tele korporativne integritete rezultat deregulacije trga, ki se predvsem poznamo v Ameriki, ki je tudi pripeljalo do globalne krize, ali je pa to enostavno odraz prevelikega apetita družb, ki delujejo v poslovnem svetu. Zdaj, nekateri pravijo, da so kršitve korporativne integritete zgolj rutina in da brez tega poslovanja ne bo šlo. Drugi so pa zopet mnenja, da v bistvu se poslovna integriteta dviguje, zavedanje se o tem dviguje in da odkrivamo vedno več takšnih praks in zato potem tudi imamo več takšnih škandalov, ki so potem tudi omenjeni v naših medijih. Odgovor je najbrž nekje vmes. Dejstvo je, da preganjamo vedno več tovrstne dejanja, ne moremo pa zanikati tudi dejstva, da imamo veliko kršitev tudi v naših družbah. In o tem je treba javno tudi govoriti. Dekanja je tudi omenila zadeve, ki so bile na ekonomski fakulteti. Imamo tudi podjetja, ki bodo danes tudi spregovorila o tem, tako da je zelo pomembno, da o tem javno tudi govorimo in da si ne zatiskamo oči. Leta 2014 so bile sprejete smernice korporativne integritete, ki naj bi zavezovale nekako podjetja oziroma spodbujale podjetja k bolj zakonitem in etičnem poslovanju v našem gospodarstvu. Od takrat je minilo skoraj 3 leta in moram povedati, da do sedaj se ni pokazalo, da je prav veliko podjetij, razen pač tiste, ki delujejo v finančnem sektorju, da bi resno pristopili tej zadevi. Pri nas, dokler nekaj ni v zakonu, kar ni obvezno, se še vedno ne vpeljuje zaradi same boljše prakse. Minilo je 3 leta in je pomembno se zavedati, da imeti korporativno integriteto na papirju ni dovolj, ni več dovolj. In pomembno je takšne sisteme vzpostavljati in tudi živeti v praksi. Če želi podjetje biti bolj učinkovito in konkurenčno, mora tudi dejansko to živeti. Če to postane strateški cilj družbe, korporativne integritete ali pa skladnost poslovanja, kakorkoli se to imenuje zdaj v praksi, če to postane strateški cilj in se to dnevno živi, potem so podjetja uspešne. Če pa to postane samo kot neka vrsta orodja komunikacije z javnostjo, prej ko slej se bo pokazalo, da je to narobe. In definitivno se je to tudi pokazalo, ta neusklajenost med namenom, se pravi sprejetim kodeksom etike, strateškimi načrti in pa dejansko prakso se je pokazalo skozi zadnje desetletje pri sistemski korupciji nekaterih največjih multinacionalk, nekatere ne obstajajo več, nekatere obstajajo, si lahko sicer privoščijo morda takšno prakso, ampak pomembno dejstvo je, da je malo takšnih podjetij, ki si lahko nekaj takega privoščijo. Sploh pa, če govorimo o slovenskih podjetjih, slovenskih družbah, tega si ne more privoščiti. Morda na kratek rok, na dolgi rok pa ali bodo podjetja propadla, ali bodo plačevali visoke kazni. Tako da je potrebno to uskladiti. Poti za vzpostavitev sistema korporativne integritete je več. O tem bomo danes pregovorili, jaz ne bom veliko o tem govorila. Imamo podjetja, ki so imeli tudi slabe izkušnje in pa dobre izkušnje in bodo to danes z nami tudi delili, tako da boste več slišali od njih. Je pa zagotovo nekaj, kar pomeni naložbo v prihodnost in se ne zgodi čez noč. Je naložba v višjo rast, za katero treba kar trdno delati. Zdaj, gosti okrogle mize, omenila je že Monika, pravi z nami bo gospa Maša Čertalič iz vodje strateškega razvoja iz Luke Koper, gospod Dominik Lamoureux, on je podpredsednik etike in družbene odgovornosti iz tale skupine. Nažalost, v zadnjem trenutku nam je tudi odpovedal gospod Romain, ki je šef skladnosti pri Alstomu, brez kakršnekoli obrazložitve. Morda je takšna bila politika, pač da ne sme se o tem javno govoriti. Potem gospod Per Sandby, ki je tudi vodja forenzike za jugovzhodno Evropo pri PVC-ju, in gospod Boštjan Trstenjak, direktor korporativnega nadzora poslovanja in preiskav pri Petrolu. Vsem bi se tudi v svojem imenu zahvalila za čas, ki ste se ga vzeli za današnjo okroglo mizo. Predvsem bi pa rada se zahvalila našim ambasadorjem korporativne integritete, namreč vsi tele predstavniki podjetij, ki so danes na okrogli mizi, Petrol, Luka Koper in pa PVC, so ambasadorji korporativne integritete, ki so 15.10.2014 javno podpisali na vrhu gospodarstva smernice korporativne integritete in se s tem zavezali spoštovanju korporativne integritete in pa seveda širjenju zavedanja. Ne izmed takšnih aktivnosti širjenja zavedanja je tudi današnji dogodek. Tako da hvala našim ambasadorjem in ne nazadnje bi se zahvalila, rečem, maskoti naših popodnevov, gospodu Kosu, ki bo tudi tokrat vodil diskusijo na okrogli mizi. Nazadnje bi samo še napovedala dva dogodka, ki jih načrtujemo zdaj v spomladanskem času. Izkoristite to priložnost, vse boste dobili tudi po mailu. Prvo bo dogodek Akademije korporativne integritete. To je prenovljena akademija, ki smo imeli 2 leti nazaj. Zdaj smo prenovili, ker smo na podlagi izkušenj iz prve akademije tudi zdaj izboljšali zadeve. Pogovarjamo se predvidoma o datumih 9. 10. marec, 16. in 17. marec ter 23. in 24. marec, spravi 3 moduli. Podrobnosti boste dobili kasneje, moramo še potrditi datume, ker seveda usklajujemo tudi z predavatelji na akademiji. In pa seveda napovedujemo tudi naš naslednje popoldne za korporativno integriteto, ki bo 13. junija, tudi v teh prostorih. Govorili bomo o davčnih oazah in kako pravzaprav globalizacija deluje. Naš gost bo takrat tudi dr. Roman Palan, ki je avtor knjige z istim imenom Davčne oaze, kako pravzaprav globalizacija deluje. In seveda z nami bodo tudi strokovnjaki za preprečevanje pranja denarja in pa davčne utaje. S tem bi jaz zaključila in bi povabila gospoda Kosa, da odpre okroglo mizo in želim uspešno debato.
Hvala, Sandra. Ponovadi ta poziv k aktivnosti moramo maskota izreči. Vse sem živel v življenju maskota, pa če ne. Tako pričujem, da naslednjič, ko bom imel tako izgled. Bi prosil goste, da kar zasedete položaje. Dominik. Moram reči, dokler naši gosti zasedajo položaje, da sem tudi osebno zelo zadovoljen, da imamo predstavnike teh podjetij danes tu. Z vsakim od njih se namreč posebej povezan. Luka Koper, ko sem bil še predsednik komisije, prečevanje komisije, je bila prvo slovensko podjetje, ki je samoiniciativno izrazilo željo, da bi naredilo nekaj na tem področju. In par korakov smo naredili, potem je prišla ponovo metla, ne na njihovi strani, na naši strani pa je to pometla, pa smo s tem prenehali. Petrol ima enega najboljših kodeksov etike in tudi sam sem dodal mali delček k temu kodeksu. Če želite videti res dober kodeks etike, pogledajte si njihovega. Dominik Lamoureux je moj prijatelj, you're my friend. Thales Group is one of the biggest, let's say, corporations in Europe, if not in the world. And they're really leading in this area, especially Mr. Lamoureux. Lamoureux is, let's say, when I started to work in the OECD in Paris, I met him as one of, let's say, the most enthusiastic professionals in this area. And I learned a lot from him, and I would like to thank him. He's also developing ideas which are extremely important now, which we will not discuss today, but the reason is the ideas are going into the direction of how should we motivate companies to do something in this area. And let's say Dominique and Thales, they really have good ideas in this area. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Per, we know each other for a long period of time, head of forensics for Eastern Europe. PVC je tudi podjetje, ki zelo veliko poudarka daje temu področju. Moram reči, da se vzajemno učimo, tako da ta ekipa, ki je danes z nami, bo res zelo je in mislim, da je tudi zelo kvalitetna. Zdaj, glede na to, da je gospod Lamoureux moral pripotovati iz Pariza, bo on imel v začetku malo več minut na razpolago, da vam predstavi svoje podjetje, svoje področje dela in probleme, s katerimi se srečuje. Z ostalimi potem bomo pa začeli kar debato, ki se bo super v teh vprašanj, ki jih je že dr. Damjana omenila. Prosil bi vas, da imete debato, če boste imeli kakšnokoli vprašanje, dvignite roko, bomo razčistili takoj. Če se vam bodo poredila kakšne vprašanja, ki se ne bodo neposredno nanašala na debato, bomo pa na koncu pustili še vedno nekaj časa za splošno razpravo. Stvar je zamišljena tako, da bi trajala tam nekje do 19. ure, seveda, če se bomo zagreli, pa ne bomo mogli ročne potegniti pravi čas, bomo malo potegnili, ampak ne preveč. So, Dominik, the first one, the floor is yours.
So, good evening. Drago, thank you very much for this very kind word. I must say, I'm very pleased indeed to be here this evening. Unfortunately, my Slovenian is not very good, so I will keep to English, even if it's not very good. And I would like, in a very few slides, just to introduce what is an integrity program for a large company like mine. And I think the first idea it's that my top manager, the executive, the board, discover that we were entering into a very new world, what I called a new paradigm, that things were changing. And I'm very thankful for them from this awareness, all at once to be aware, yes, there is be more and more challenging legal environment, more and more regulation, domestic, extraterritorial one, under strict control. And there is not only because of the authorities there is a strict control, not only because there is very heavy fine, heavy sanctions, people not only go to jail, but also are under the scrutiny of non-governmental organizations, media, and our competitors. And just if they can use some allegation to destabilize our company, we know that they will not hesitate. So, come back. But not only there is this regulation, but also a proliferation of norms and standards which are produced by international organizations, non-governmental organizations, consulting groups, and that we have to abide by. Today, a large corporation, international corporation as Thales, cannot ignore these norms and standards. Well, and on the other hand, you have this constraint, but also you have more and more requests for transparency, reporting. Not only we are under the scrutiny of officials, like the OECD and Mr. Dragokos, and we know that we must pay attention. But also investor bank, financial, extra-financial rating agency, which is quite new. Yesterday they didn't mind. They were not. Today they will not put their money in a company that could be reputation. Their reputation could be jeopardized because of scandal. And we know that only public opinion, non-governmental organizations, whistleblowers, and even our own employees are very keen on our reputation integrity. Alors, yes, we have started quite early, and because before the OECD convention coming to force, my company was facing a big scandal, which was not, there was no legal constraint, there was no legal commitment, but it was called, maybe you heard that, company called Thomson CSF, was inside a scandal with Frigate, which had been sold to Taiwan, and we create a big scandal. And it was very interesting that for my bosses, by that time, the chairman, they had always, every day, they had news in the newspaper, you know, they were discovering, as I said, this awareness that now you must pay attention to this, you must take attention to these issues. Well, and so we decided very early to comply with international domestic regulation, to integrate this anti-corruption standard, and to decide a zero tolerance policy to corruption. And to apply to third party, to purchasing, to offset and merger, like you said, to have a wide vision of where corruption and integrity can hide. And what actually I would like, it's what is, for me, considered very important, extensive training. I think it's important to have the tone from the top, to have instruction, but it's so very important to have the bottom-up approach. And for me, and I will come back to that, it's very important for the employees, for my colleagues, to be aware of what is at stake, what is the challenge, and to develop responsible behavior. Rigorous process to mitigate risk embedded in a corporate responsibility policy, global corporate responsibility policy. Alors, very quickly, this is quite been now today developed by all major corporations. Zero tolerance policy, organization, adequate organization, appropriate resources to deal with the subject, to have also comprehensive integrity policy process which are able to help my colleagues to resist corruption. Of course, we have developed internal whistleblowing. As I said, we put a lot of attention to information, training, awareness, and so on. Risk mapping, always the same idea. One size does not fit all. Be careful to have adapted. And I think, for me, what is the most important, adequate. Your process must be adapted to your organization, to your market, to your customers. And of course, internal audit and control system to check that all the way. And then when you have done that, you start again, and you don't stop improving it. And it's now, we are today in the third process to improve our, what we have put in place. I think it's a continuous process. Alors, bon, tone at the top. This is a very important, the statement for the chairman, but visible commitment, strong from the, but what I like to insist is not only the tone from the top, but tone from the middle. It's also very important that all my colleagues also develop this zero tolerance and this importance of integrity. What is to have also the appropriate, as I said, adequate processes. We have a lot of risk, and we have to address all these risks. Alors, selecting and contracting with third parties, agent, intermediaries, and so on. But also gift and hospitality, sponsorship, charity, donation, conflict of interest, merger and acquisition, and to address, be sure that agent, consultant, other intermediaries are under control, that we have local key industrial partners which are also controlled and which have done all the adapted due diligence to check that there is no risk of corruption, but also other third parties like offset, and of course, last but not least, the client, the customer. And all this is the process we have implemented. Yes, it's a little bureaucratic. Yes, there is a lot of process of due diligence, checking, and so on. But we think that it's important, and it must be done so that it helps my colleagues, the employee of the group, to be able to raise it to the question. Well, as I said, for me, the most important, it's not only the regulation, the constraint, the process. It's also very important that everybody in the company is aware what is at stake, what are the change, what are the risks for the company, for themselves, for their job. And that's why we develop a lot of leaflet, e-learning process, and specific training to address this issue, the critical issue, accountability and buy-in. Bon. I said we can develop all the best effort, we can do all the best we can do. We are in an unfavorable environment because the passive corruption, you know, the fact to ask for money or to accept money, is the major issue, and not the so-called active corruption. You see, there is the idea that active corruption means it's a bad company who will try to cover innocent civil servant. I said it's bullshit. It does not exist. Nobody in the, it's our customers, our official, you say, you want the contract, you pay. You want the custom clearance, you pay. You want the license to operate, you pay. You want, what you say, or you pay, and you have all the risk, or you say, no, we don't pay. And this is what, and I'm always afraid that some of my colleagues would say, oh, it's clever, I'm clever. Don't get caught, I'm more clever than the other, nobody will know. But I said today it's more and more difficult not to know. And to be, so, bribery is endemic, still endemic. Soliciting and extortion have to be not be tackled or violated. Corporations are hostage to customer, responsible company, and great pressure from the demand side. We are the hostage of our customer. And some competitors, we know that, have a more understanding environment. We must not be naive. So, what we have tried to do is to try to develop collective action. So, all our competitors from the aerospace and defense industry together, very quickly, we begin by, at the European level, writing the common industry standard, kind of guidelines that we share all together in Europe. And then with our US colleague, we develop what we call the global principle, a common charter, you know, that we decided to abide and to develop and to with all other countries and other competitors. And today we have created, this was now 7 years ago, what we call the International Forum on Business Ethical Conduct, developing to develop a worldwide level playing field. So that to try to create a standard that everybody needs to be to abide for, and promoting also the company with robust integrity standard. This gives us the opportunity to have an extensive exchange with our stakeholders. So with First International Organization, and the PAGO very kindly accept to be part of this forum every year, but also non-governmental organizations like Transparency International, like our customer, NATO, and so on, to exchange and to how we can develop this anti-corruption policy all together. Well, and also we have tried to be part of the G20 and through the Business 20 to try to develop this initiative. To finish, we consider that, for a company it's very important to be recognized not only by Transparency International, by our shareholders and through the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, by the Global Compact of the United Nations, and also that our process has been certified. But what I would like to say, and I think it's something very important, that it's okay to develop anti-corruption, anti-bribery policy, but it must be part of a more global business ethic policy where we had addressed export control, money laundering, industrial espionage, influence peddling, and so on. You cannot be just to say, oh yes, corruption is important, we don't mind the rest. No, you need to have this systemic, global, coherent policy, which are also integrated into a corporate responsibility to address environmental issues, shareholder rights, human rights, employee working conditions, and so on. All these need to be coherent if you want to succeed. And so it's now 15 years we have developed this global policy, and I think we're quite happy because there is a recognition from our environment, but maybe more important, there is a recognition of our own employee. And to finish, I have just prepared this slide. Corporate responsibility is important with business and collective intelligence. We need to develop with our competitors and our stakeholders and our environment to develop this intelligence so that we, at the end of the day, and this is my wish, ethics pay. What we need that today, ethics, integrity, become a competitive advantage which creates growth and innovation. Thank you.
Dominique, since not all our participants are very familiar with Thales Group, can you just tell us, let's say, what's the range of the company? How many?
Very quickly, there is 62,000 employees worldwide. It's not because it's a French company at the origin, but now we are British, Australian, American, Dutch, and so on. We are, and I did not explain, sorry, how to resist to corruption, how to resist to bribe, it's to create a new business model. And this new business model is to be an actor in every country where we want to sell. Industrial actor, we share technology, we share in industry, we share program with our customer. And so now it's a program going global, and I think that we are one of the only company in the defense security, quite sensitive market, which are completely global. As I said, we are American, we are British, we are French, we are Spanish, and so on. And the turnover of the company is 13 million euro. Billion, sorry. Thank you. Yes, more comfortable. And we are in our defense, security, aerospace, aeronautic, transportation, and so on. Anytime when you need security and electronic telesis.
That was the commercial part. This is the
That was it, yeah.
Hvala lepa, Dominik. Zakaj je bila ta predstavitev pomembna? Ne samo zaradi tega, ker smo še enkrat slišali, kaj se je stalo en učinkovit sistem skladnosti, ampak tudi zaradi tega, ker vidimo recimo tudi tako velike sistemi, kot je Thales Group, so bili na nek način prisiljeni razviti ta sistem in zaradi tega se sedaj seveda prejemajo vrsto nagrad, ki pa niso pomembne same posebej kot nagrade. Ne? In tu se zdaj približujemo našemu problemu, zaradi katerega v bistvu smo organizirali to debato danes. Najprej seveda treba povedati, da je kar malo simboličnega značaja, da se o tem pogovarjamo ravno tu, na ekonomski fakulteti, potem, ker ekonomska fakulteta lani imela tako hude probleme z vsemi znanimi dodatki. Že to, da je bila fakulteta pripravljena organizirati takšen dogodek v relativno kratkem času po teh zgodbah, kaže na to, da je fakulteta pripravljena se soočiti z tem, kar se je dogajalo, karkoli to je že bilo. Prej bi samo rekel, da zgodba še ni končana, vse pravno ne, ker v bistvu bile so podane kazenske ovadbe, tožilstvo, mogoče pozneje sodišče bo moralo reči svoje, takrat bomo šele vedeli, na čem smo. Ampak to nas je spodbudilo k temu ravno za organizacijo tega dogodka danes. Namreč osnovno vprašanje, o katerem bomo debatirali danes, je pa naslednje. Ko postavimo sistem skladnosti z vsemi elementi, ko stvar čudovito funkcionira na papirju, se nam zna zalomiti, ko se srečamo z prvim resnim problemom. Namreč, kaj storiti potem? Mi vse imamo. Če se bomo začeli s problemom ukvarjati tako, kot se je potrebno ukvarjati s problemom, zna stvar priti v javnost in naše podjetje se bo znašlo na hudem udaru javnosti in potem nič ne bodo pomagali prepričevanja, da smo mi do tega prišli sami, da imamo tako dober sistem, ki je zaznal zadevo, ki je odreagiral na zadevo, da smo odpravili posledice, da smo uveljavili odgovornost tisti, ki so pač bili odgovorni. Podjetje pa zaradi tega, če ni drugega, trpelo na ugledu. Dominik je na koncu rekel še nekaj zelo pomembnega. Rekel je ethics pays, se pravi, etika se splača. Ali velja to tudi za našo slovensko okolje? O tem se bomo pogovarjali danes. Pa začel kar z Počertalič. Luka Koper je bila v zadnjih mesecih, zadnje čase niti ne, ampak malo nazaj pa, kar dosti v medijih, zaradi tega, ker pač so bili interesi lastnika malo drugačni, kot pa so bili lastniki, ko so bili interesi recimo nadzornikov, kot so bili lastniki, ko so bili interesi delavcev. Seveda, jaz si znam predstavljati, kako hude težave je ta polarnost znotraj Luke povzročala. Kako ste vi stvar dojemali, kako ste, pa zdaj ni treba zelo konkretno, ampak govorim na načelni ravni, kako je bilo z vašega vidika strateškega načrtovanja, seveda tudi skladnosti, o kateri govorimo danes, se sooča s tem problemom, kjer je bilo popolnoma jasno, da se dogaja nekaj, kar ni normalno, da imajo lastniki interese, ki jih zaposleni v firmi nočejo uresničiti.
No, lep pozdrav tudi z moje strani. Jaz lahko za začetek čisto povem, da sem že 15 let v Luki Koper, tako da v zadnjih 11 letih mi smo menili 8 predsednikov uprav.
Če lahko imate mikrofon, se nam treba pogledati. Vse, mislim, da dela.
Dela, ok. Ja, 15 let, več kot 15, septembra pa 15, sem v Luki Koper, tako da mi smo v zadnjih 11 od 2-5 dalje menili 8 predsednikov uprav, da ne govorim še ostalih članov uprav. Sistem postaja z nekontinuiteto vodenja ranljiv, dosti bolj kot kakšen drugi, ki uspe vzpostaviti neko trdnost in dejansko tudi vrednote postaviti na svoje mesta. In to se pozna, vsekakor. Da, kar se je letos dogajalo in kar je potem bilo tudi medijsko izpostavljeno, vsekakor smo doživljali in še tisti, ki smo dlje časa tam mogoče še bolj in včasih celo z nekimi čustvenimi reakcijami, ki mogoče za nek poslovni svet niso niti več normalne, ampak neka pripadnost v našem okolju simbolizira tudi uspehe, ki jih naša družba ima. Tako da včasih se tudi sami potem interno, ko si zastavljamo dolgoročne načrte, ki so ne glede na upravo relativno konstantni. Dejansko, če si mi želimo interno postaviti naše prioritete, uspeh, dolgoročnost, poslovanja, trajnost delovnih mest, trajnostni razvoj, ne nazadnje, pristanišče kot tako nedvomno posega zelo v okolje in enostavno si moramo, tam večina nas tudi živi, imamo vsi interes, da je to čim bolj skladno z vsemi kakovostimi, z ravnjo življenjskega standarda na obali. Torej, mi enostavno načrtujemo dolgoročno in kontinuirano. In potem včasih se nam zdi mogoče nenavadno, da lastnik nima enakih interesov, kot jih imamo v družbi in da so ti interesi dejansko tudi konstantni. Družba kot taka, strateške dokumente, ki jih ima, praktično ne spreminja. Cilji so enaki. Menjujejo se vodstva, menjujejo se mogoče način vodenja sistema, ampak vrednote, ki jih imamo in cilji, ki jih imamo, ostajajo. In zato tudi lahko smo priča vsaj v zadnjih letih dobrim poslovnim rezultatom. Medijsko je sigurno to izziv predstaviti, ampak upamo, da prej bomo uspeli poistovetiti interese družbe tudi z interesi lastnika. To bo izziv, nedvomno, ampak želimo si, da bi do tega prišli.
Vse videl gospodom Trstenjakom, ne imate srečo, da oba prihajate z podjetji, ki so v državni lasti, kjer je lastnik država In tam, sploh okolje kot je Slovenija, ni ravno značilno, da so interesi lastnika isti kot interesi podjetja. Mi vse vemo, da prvič, država je samo sebi slab lastnik in drugič, da tudi v Sloveniji menjajoče se vlade včasih izgubijo razsodnost glede na to, kaj bi počele s svojim podjetji. Ne govorimo o privatizaciji, govorimo o tem, kaj bodo počele z obstoječim podjetji, ker pač je ta princip, da je, ko priješ na oblast, si prišel v koritu, ki je treba pač izkoristiti prostor, ki ga prašički imajo. To pač časi ni nujno skladno z interese podjetja. Gospod Trstinar, malo drugačno vprašanje. Vi kot vodja službe za nadzor in za preiskave, zagotovo v podjetju odkrivate stvari, ki bi bile za slovensko javnost še kako zanimive, če bi se javnost za njih izvedela. Pa ne govorim o majhnih stvareh, govorim tudi o stvareh, ki so mogoče odločilnega pomena za Petrol. Kako razmišljate takrat? Ali s tem seznaniti javnost, ali stvar urediti znotraj hiše? In če urediti znotraj hiše, kdo je potem tisti, ki o tem ve?
Dobar večer, tudi v mojem imenu. Ja, za razliko od Luke Koper imamo mi zadnje...
Mislim, da je delo, ne?
Dobar večer. Za razliko od Luke Koper imamo mi zadnja leta zelo stabilno vodstvo, ki seveda zelo živi korporativno integriteto. Ja, tako kot ste omenili, znotraj Petrola, kjer je zaposlenih več kot 4000 zaposlenih, več kot 4 milijarde prometa imamo, več kot 460 prodajnih mest in vsakodnevno 180 000 kupcev. Kakšno tveganje predstavlja to za Petrol? Mislim, da veliko. Imamo prodajno, nabavne in pa logistične kanale, vemo, koliko goriva se dnevno pretaka, kakšni so interesi prevoznih podjetij, ker se tega tiče. Tako da, ko zaznamo manjšo, večjo ali srednjo nepravilnost, neželene ravnanje, je prva stvar ta, da o njej ne močimo, ampak se jo lotimo. Mi to delamo zelo na vnaprej pripravljen način, zelo jasnim vodenjem vseh postopkov, ki so transparentni in kjer zahtevajo tudi odgovornost posameznika, ki je za posamezno področje odgovoren, kjer do tega neželenega ravnanja pride. Seveda, ko so stvari večjega pomena, se usedemo z upravo, PR-jem, kjer da ne želimo komunicirati z zunanjo javnostjo, vendar to so interne zadeve, ki jih je potrebno zaščititi v interesu podjetja in seveda s tem tudi ohraniti ugled podjetja. Kot sami vidite, Petrol se ne pojavlja v nekih medijih kot podjetje, ki ne skrbi za to, kar je tudi gospod Dominik prej govoril. Tudi mi imamo načelo ničelne tolerance do naklepnih dejanj in nobeno dejanje ne ostane tako rekoč v zraku. Vedno pridemo do končnega cilja, kakšen je seveda v interesu družbe ta, da vse primere obravnavamo enako, da so potencialni ali kršitelji obravnavani enako, s tem dvigujemo tudi nivo obravnavanja in pa seveda potem tudi na koncu tudi neke kaznovalne politike, ki seveda zahteva določena ravnanja.
Hvala lepa. Nekaj zelo pomembnega ste rekli. Rekli ste, če pride do nepravilnosti, da stečejo naprej pripravljeni postopki. In to je zelo pomembno. Namreč, če bomo mi začeli razmišljati, kaj storiti, ko se nekaj zgodi, potem bomo zagotovo storili napako. Sve je problem, ker pri nas v slovenskih podjetjih, predvsem, ko se spostavlja sistemi skladnosti, mi ponavadi razmišljamo o tem, kaj se nam zna zgoditi, kateri so elementi znotraj podjetja, na katere moramo paziti. Vi pa vsi veste, da v okolju kot je Slovenija, zelo majhno okolje, v katerem se bolj ne hitro vse zve, so časih, sploh če gre za podjetja v državne lasti, so tudi zunanji elementi, ki so še kako pomembni in še kako vplivajo na to, kaj se bo v podjetju dogajalo. Tudi te je treba vzeti v obzir. Seveda, ne govorimo zdaj o situaciji, o katerih je prej govorila gospod Črtalič, da ima lastnik drugačne interese, kot pa ima podjetje samo. Zdaj govorimo na dosti nižjem nivoju, govorimo o konkretnih situacijah, govorimo o situacijah, kjer prihaja do kršitev pravil, ki so zapisana že predtem, pravi so postavljeni nekih standardov, in ko se izvaja postopek, ki so določeni naprej. Takrat moramo vedeti, kaj vse lahko vpliva na njih znotraj in od zunaj. Dominik, when you prepare the report at the end of the year, who reads your reports? Not who, to whom you send your reports? Who are, the title of today's event is who is the owner of the compliance system? So who is the owner of your compliance system in Thales Group?
It's, I would say, there is all the different parts of the integrity policy, and which are under the human resources, operation, legal, and ethics and purposes. So I think we are, as we said, we are the process owners and responsible for that. But of course, at the end of the day, it's absolutely the chairman. And the chairman signed, and all our annual report is certified by our auditors. So it's not PricewaterhouseCoopers. One day it will be, because we have to change quite a bit. It will be one PricewaterhouseCoopers. But and what I think it's important is the fact that it's totally owned by integrity is totally owned by the chairman and the executive committee, and maybe also at least the board itself. Maybe if I can add, we have decided, and you will find this on intranet, all the information about Thales policy is available on intranet. We have internet on the web. We have decided to publicize everything, all the document, leaflet, and so on, so you can find everything. And particularly, we have developed this year what we call the integrity report. The integrity report, a new form of reporting compliance, but how it's connected, I think it's a real progress, and that how it's integrated in our strategy. It's not something outside, the common everyday life of the company. It's completely embedded in our process. It's embedded in our industrial process, in our, human resource process, and it's embedded in our strategy. And sorry, just to finish, so we have developed what we call now, it's very chic, matrix of materiality. Don't know exactly what does it mean, but it's very chic. No, but behind the word, it means for me nothing. You will see in this, what is that? What are the real stake? What is the challenge which are at stake for the company? What are the consequences for the company? And where is our where we must put the pressure and the attention if we want to develop this integrity policy. So, and now this is being accepted, of course, by everybody in the company. I mean, at the highest level, from the finance, operation, strategy, and the chairman. What is really our strategy concerning integrity and ethical issues?
Do you put, when you say you put your report on the internet, do you put also report on, let's say, breaches which have been discovered and investigated? And if yes, in which detail?
I think the idea is to work, to cooperate with the authority. I think now, what is at the end of the day, it's full cooperation. I think so.
Per, today we will not discuss PricewaterhouseCoopers, but you're working other, let's say, in your clients. Of course, not in concrete, because you cannot tell us, but the question which I always wanted to know is, the answer to it, working in an area of forensic investigations, when you discover, let's say, real and serious problems in your clients, what is usual reaction of your clients? Are they happy that you found out that something is gone terribly wrong? Or they are just accepting the facts? Or they would like you to forget what you have found out?
Well, all of the above. It's very individual. I mean, I'm happy to say that most professional organizations today, they do take this seriously, as the gentlemen here have described, but you also have instances where, you know, they have initial information that there could be something wrong, and depending on where that problem is, there could be an element of embarrassment for certain people, so they want to push it under the carpet and try to forget about it. Other times we start an investigation and we have seen resistance in following certain leads in certain directions. So I'm not talking about just Slovenia now, I'm talking about, you know, I worked abroad for about 20 years, so don't speculate in which companies I'm talking about, but sometimes the clients or certain members of management try to be selective. So they say you can go after those people, but, you know, stay away from those people. For example, when we do asset tracing on behalf of banks, and, you know, you need to be very careful what you accept. I mean, we need to, we're obviously hired by a client to do a piece of work, but we also need to maintain our integrity in doing that work and be honest with the client as well as to what we have found and what we think is the right thing to do. And, you know, there are also companies I worked with internationally that have been subject to massive investigations, you know, including FCPA, and they've been in court, and we know about other cases brewing elsewhere, but the CEO or even the board, the chairman, is desperate to keep this under lock and cover, because the last thing we need now is one more case. And I think that's a quite short-term viewpoint, because sooner or later, as we all experience, it will become a real case, and it's quite embarrassing and difficult then for the management of the company to explain why they acted the way they did. So I guess overall, yeah, most companies take this seriously. Other times they're more relaxed. We also had cases, say in the banking industry, where one particular country, they're basically rigid. Basically, they say, and the Dutch, they say, don't fuck with us. I mean, basically, they spend $1.10 to get $1 back. Whereas other countries may be more, oh, we got insurance, so don't worry about it, we'll leave it. So it does vary, but the majority, thankfully, take this seriously.
Yeah, you know, the reason I ask you this question is very simple. I know a company which is not one of Big Four, you know, but the CEO told me that they are dealing with forensic investigations, and then after 1 week they produced the intermediate report, and the client cancelled the contract. So the CEO went to the client and said, well, what did we do wrong? Are you not satisfied with our work? And the guy said, yeah, we just found out too much, you know, in 1 week. We already found out in 1 week, so let's stop doing it.
That's happened. It happens not frequently, but it happens occasionally. And we've also walked away. I mean, the client might stop an investigation for those reasons that you mentioned, but we also had cases where we don't feel that if we cannot trust the client or the client's nominated managers enough, then again, we value our integrity and our brand as well, and our reputation, and we've actually walked away from investigations too.
Just to jump in.
Per, can you pass the microphone so everybody else can hear?
Robert Sens, just to know what happens in that moment. You walked away, and have you followed that case, how that developed in a few months or a year later? Because sooner or later it comes up.
Sometimes it might turn up in the news. It may take some time, but I know one case, for example, that's some years ago when I was based in Germany, and we were called in by a construction company. I don't want to share too much information here, but and they were up for a big contract in Northern Africa. And obviously, again, business partners, as was on the schedule before, you need to do a proper vetting of them. And just from those initial discussions, it came up that there were certain red flags, quite clear red flags. But basically, that company, the board, decided to go for the money and not do any vetting process. And I know subsequently, yes, they ended up in problems, and because, as you know, the regime in Libya ended, and new regimes, they may share information which is difficult for these business partners, so they ended up in trouble afterwards.
Can you pass the mic to Dominic? You would like to add something?
Drago, what I wanted to say that things have completely changed in, I would say, in the last 10 years. It's a complete, and what it's called internet, it's called smartphone, it's called social network and so on. Just say, brutal, but pedophilia and priest was something which exists for years, but it's completely hidden. Now it's known by everybody. A policeman in the state arrests somebody a little, a colored man, a little quick, strongly, so immediately you have this picture on all the social networks all around the world. What happened in your company? I remember, yes, 10 years ago it was easy to hide, you put pressure on the journalists. Now it's your own employees through the whistleblowing, or we use the media or internet. I think we need to understand that now, and the fact that we have now to cooperate with particularly with our civil servant, with our administration, is absolute, and with justice, is now. It's not now you don't say, okay, no, you have to do it because it's the only way you can stop. If you don't speak, somebody will speak for you.
Yeah, but you see, you have to realize that, let's say, something else working in France, in the area of compliance, and working in Slovenia, or working, let's say, in Tajikistan.
Oh, well, sorry, okay. No, but there is country where you don't have press, of course.
Let's say that in Slovenia, discussing about corporate compliance just 5-10 years ago was something which was very strange. Today, it makes sense. It makes sense. Not very much in practical terms for all companies, but let's say majority, in many companies, yes, but not in all of companies. But if you go more to the east, or even if you go to Asia, let's say, if you're not dealing with multinationals, you will find very strange situations where people will not even know what is compliance system in place. Včeraj smo že sporo rundu vprašanj, tako da naši kjer temu, kar smo slišali zdaj, kar izvolite.
Jaz sem imela dve, but maybe I can answer them in English so that it's easier for you. Hello, my name is Sonja Schmutz. This is not working.
Dela.
Okay, I hope you hear me. Now it will work. Yes. Yeah, sure. Sonja Schmutz is my name. I'm from Managers Association of Slovenia. And a question for probably all of you. One is, we've seen the world whistleblowers also on your slide in particular. And how can that be turned into workable policy, and not on the other hand push it as of people feeling that they're turning to like spies for the others. So I think there can be a thin line, but also if you don't treat whistleblowers with respect, then you're just sending a strong message. We're having this just for the show. And the company that you mentioned, Drago, who said, oh, we found too much in 1 week, is probably doing much, much worse on whistleblowing policies. And the other question would be on tone from the top, which was also mentioned. But I would bring it a little bit around. We all know that if managers at the top, if leaders are corrupt, then probably the whole of the system is just there for take. But also, somebody who was working on a really tough banking cases in Slovenia told me that when he went in to correct what was done wrongly, and it was a bank, one of the two banks that were in liquidation, he said that he sat with the employees and told them, What you've been doing for the years was actually taking bribes with your paychecks because you knew what was going on, or you should have known. And if you don't look and if you don't do the right thing, then it means that you're also being bribed every month by the paycheck that you get. And I think that's quite strong. I'm not sure if I can completely agree with that, but I think there's a strong message in there too.
Who would like to comment on that? Basically, the question, vprašanje tu je zelo enostavno, ne, čigav interese delajo whistlebloweri. Žvižgači, ne, mi imamo zakon napisan prijavitelji, se zdaj že v domačih žvižgačih. So, in whose interest the whistleblowers work? Who would like to say something?
It shall be in the interest of the companies, which is the highest interest of the all employees and also the other stakeholders. But it depends if the culture within the company is enough mature to allow such activities going on. At least in our case, I don't think that we are at that stage at the moment, but we are developing, let's say, quite high standards in terms of corporate integration. So I hope that soon we will also be able to have such cases.
What I feel in my company is yesterday you got a job, it was for the life, long term, and you shut up. If there is something wrong, shut up. And there was this kind of policy of silence, you know. It's not, as you tell yourself. Now things is really totally changing. Because a job for the life, more or less evident. And, you know, restructuring, new re-engineering and merger, acquisitions. No, this does not exist. And now the particularly new generation, they speak. And they don't hesitate to say what. And they think it's a part of okay, it's a value. It's a value. Today it's a value, the factory. And I think what we call the millennials, you know, this new generation, really will change the way we manage. Definitely will change how we manage the company. But it's clear that in our company we took this very seriously. Any information we get through the different email, or we have a different way to contact the ethics committee, we pay a lot of attention. And we know that if we don't treat it, as I said before, it will be treated by other people. So we have to be very careful.
Okay.
Maybe just a couple of things to the issue of whistleblowing. I mean, we know globally that the whistleblower function is the #1 factor or channel to detect cases. So it is very effective. But we also know from a fraud survey about a year ago that in particular parts of the world, such as Southern Eastern Europe, there's a high degree of skepticism to the implementation of that. And some of that has an historical background, the thing on telling on people from some decades ago. And some feedback we get is that many organizational employees are more comfortable if that function is external and not internal, because they don't really trust that whoever receives these reports internally over the internal systems, that they're totally anonymous and protected. And again, our experience is that the whistleblower function overall works very well. Another thing, we need to be careful not to mix, because the picture of whistleblowers, if you look at the news, I mean, it's some very sensational cases that are presented, from Snowden to these things that are in the news for years. And I think it's easier for staff and organizations to focus too much on that, because it's not really representative for our organizations. And the way a normal whistleblower function works is quite different, and it does have a big value. And thirdly, just finally, another thing guess in particular in this region again, where perhaps it's difficult to get people to step forward with particular cases, with particular pieces of information. There are also other tools like surveys. We sometimes refer to them as integrity barometers or thermostats, to survey more the overall, anonymously as well, the perception, a little bit like Transparency International, but in a different angle, to see where in an organization there are perhaps some hotspots that should be followed up in some more detail.
Hvala.
Če smem še jaz.
Super.
Polje žvižgačev ali pa prijaviteljev je treba obravnavati izredno resno. Mi v Petrolu smo se tega lotili na ta način, da vsaka zadeva, ki pride, tako kot sem omenil, se obravnava z vso resnostjo. Bodi si je to prijava preko elektronske pošte, SMS-a, telefonskega klica ali prijavitelja anonimen ali javen. Bistvo je, da se prijavitelja zaščiti. Vemo, da v največ primerih se ljudje ne oglašajo iz enega preprostega razloga. Kaj bo potem z njim? V Petrolu imamo politiko, ki se tega področja zelo natančno dotika in prijavitelja v posameznem primeru zaščitimo do konca. Kaj to pomeni? Tudi v primeru, da se na sodišču zadeva obravnava, poskušamo prijavitelja zaščititi do te mere, da se ne razkrije. Saj samo s takim načinom spodbudimo tudi druge, da povejo in pa pokažejo na neželene ravnanja. Vzpostavljenih imamo več linij, z letošnjim letom tudi zunanjo linijo, ampak tako kot sem omenil, dolgoletna praksa in pa to, da se ne zamiži v primerih neželenih ravnanj, je ključnega pomena, da tudi druge spodbudimo to, da prijavijo zadevo. Pa ne bo to majhnega pomena ali velikega pomena. Tako da na tak način imamo zadevo v Petrolu upeljano in moram reči, da izredno dobro funkcionira. Od poslovodnih delavcev do zadnjega prodajalca na prodajnem mestu.
Pa zdaj glede na to, da smo posebno razpravo, vi se Dori že imeli, bi jaz prosil, da poskušamo iti korak naprej. Seveda, če so še vprašanja v tej smeri, ni problem. Bom pa se kako potem moral iti naprej glede tega, kar je tema današnjega posveta. Najprej vprašanje tam.
Thank you very much. Vid Dorja, Transparency International Slovenia. I have 3 questions, only 2 now, because part of my question, one of my questions was dedicated to the whistleblowing internal and external mechanisms, but let's go on that. Due to the fact that after all the leaks and especially Panama Papers, corruption has completely changed its courses due to what we thought that corruption is basically. I have 2 questions which are quite relevant on a big scale, but they are also quite specific to each of your companies. So one is dedicated to the lobbying. So we know that lobbying activities and lobbying per se, especially in Europe, has been one of the hotspots lately in last years, especially on European level and also country specifics. So one question would be, how do you in your country, in your companies, dedicate time or courses? What kind of courses do you have to train your lobbyists, or how do you achieve that your lobbying activities are done in an ethical and transparent manner? And the second question is dedicated to grant corruption, and this is a lot of discussion in the media and in public in general, how we see where accountability lies when we talk about corruption cases in practice. And we really don't have really good answers from the companies on the question, which is all the high-profile corruption cases which are dedicated to the companies are laying with high penalties for that company, but there is quite a lot of times, majority of times, lacking the individual accountability of the persons in that companies. How do you think these cases influence the business environment we live in, and how do you think this affect your business which you're doing in your daily lives? whoever wants to answer.
Volunteers.
Concerning lobbying, important subject. The point is, how do you define lobbying? You know, and it's okay to inform about product, about the technical solutions, about any quite legal issue, and discuss that with your civil servant, with your politician. I think it's very important. We need Transparency International do a lot of lobby, and we know that, and as we do lobby to promote our product. I think and when it's bad, when it's normal, when it's everything, we have to, and I think we have to work together to define exactly. For me, what is the most important is transparency. Is what we promote, what we defend, what we propose, and particularly, of course, it's to defend our product, our system, to our civil servant, and I prefer to defend in France that we defend the French product, which is more than the US product, or I don't know, Chinese product. And I think I will say to my colleague, please, do the good lobby, because we need to sell products, we need to sell our equipment, we need to sell our system. But the importance is it needs to be transparent. And this is what we don't have a lot of lobbying, and maybe unfortunately, we have very few in our company, but what we work all together is transparency. What is new is what we will have to pay, because it's not easy. It's influence peddling, the complex of influence peddling, when it's normal transfer of information, and when it's become also this is new subject. We have to think, and what I must say, it's we need to do that collectively. Concerning the other question, I forget.
Can just stop? Bom sam prevedel, tako je zdaj rekel, influence peddling se v Sloveniji prevaja kot nezakonito posredovanje, ki je v našem kazenskem zakoniku celo inkriminirano. Imamo dve kaznivi dejanji, če kdo sprejema podkupnine za nezakonito posredovanje. Običajni angleški izraz za to je trading in influence, tako da sem, da ne bo pomotil. I just translated what you said.
Yes,
this is a specific legal term.
Yes. The other question?
Grand corruption.
Huh?
Grand corruption.
Grand corruption? What does it mean?
When companies are being caught doing corrupt activities, home and outside, huge cases like, for example, Volkswagen lately, they get a huge penalties for the companies to pay, but there is no individual accountability on the aspect of the companies in front of the courts. And how do you think this affects the business environment in general everywhere?
I'm sorry, I don't understand very well.
I will reply if I may.
Yes, please.
Okay. Kar mi ugotavljamo v OECD je to, kar pravite, res. Ko se odkrijejo veliki slučaji korupcije, smo tudi drugi ne pravili, recimo, kar je bilo v Volkswagenu, to ne moramo govoriti o korupciji, ampak goljufija, se res vedno pogosteje dogaja, da se postopki končajo na sodiščih z neke vrste poravnava med ali tožilstvom in firmo ali sodiščem in firmo. Pri tem do uveljavljanja individualne odgovornosti res ne pride. To je za nas, recimo, v zadnjem času postavila zelo pomembna stvar na OECD-ju. Mi bomo temu posvetili prihodno veliko pozornosti, zaradi tega, ker pravimo, da ne more biti samo odgovornosti pravnih oseb brez odgovornosti fizičnih oseb. Če gremo nazaj malo v zgodovino, so mi, ne mi, je cel svet tradicionalno preganjal fizične osebe za storjena kazniva dejanja. Ker je bilo zakonodajalce strah, da se bo stvar zlorabila v tej smeri, da bodo, recimo, sodišče rekli, ok, zaradi tega, ker kaznujemo direktorja tega podjetja ne kaznujemo, imamo skoraj v vseh zakonodajah napisano naslednje, da pride do odgovornosti pravnih oseb tudi takrat, kadar ni fizične osebe, ki bi odgovarjale za kaznivo dejanje. V praksi se kaže, da je ta izjema postala pravilo, ki se stvar obrnila. Namreč, da odgovarjajo pravne osebe, ne pa tudi fizične osebe, kar je napak. In temu bomo to bo področje, ki bo res v bodočnosti zelo izpostavljeno. Sedaj pa problem, ker so vsi, tako podjetja, ki jih dobijo pri nečednem početju, kot tudi tožilstvo, kot tudi sodišča, še kako zainteresirani, da stvari končajo z poravnavo, settlement. In tam se potem dogovorijo za pogoje te poravnave, ki ponovadi ne vključujejo odgovornosti fizičnih oseb. Je pa se zagotovo to korak v nepravi smeri.
I don't know, because I didn't understand exactly what you said, but I think to answer, I understand what you mean. There is also the Yates memo, the Sybil Yates, this US under attorney, who said this is a US regulation directive.
It's a brand new one. It's a brand new one. Brand new.
Brand new?
Brand new. It's a new one, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To say stop to the different judge in the state or investigation, stop looking for the company responsibility, for the individual responsibility, and because it will be more effective. And we are quite aware of that. The fact that a big company can pay a few million and or billion, and everybody forget that. No, the responsibility of the executive chairman and any company. I must say, sorry, when I give a speech in my company, I explain it's not only the chairman and CEO will go to jail. It can be any of you. And this is, I think it's a new tendency.
Yeah. So, v bistvu to potrjuje samo to, kar ste rekel. Namreč, kako bi se to prevedlo? Attorney General ameriški je izdal usmeritve, po katerih se bo vedno več se bo dala poanta dejansko iskanje odgovornosti fizičnih oseb, se pravi direktorjev. Kar v bistvu to, kar pravimo, da se bo počasi postavil sporedni sistem, ki bo poskušal narediti oboje, kaznovati tako fizične storilce kaznivih dejanj, kot tudi podjetja, v katerih je do tega prihajalo. Vedeti moramo seveda tudi to, da bodo fizične storilce kaznovani tudi zato, ker compliance sistemi niso funkcionirali. Ne zato, ker bi bili direktorji direktno vpleteni, mora biti na konstrukovanju, tudi zaradi tega, ker niso sistema postavili tako, kot bi ga morali. Let's make a step.
Can I just
Short one.
Yeah. Just very quick on the lobbyist part. If you treat that similar to treat business partners or agents, you are fully responsible. You need to know what they actually do. I mean, what are their activities? What do you actually pay for? And I had a case. I like to refer to cases a bit far away from here because that's safer. We had a case in Argentina where they've been fined, there was conviction, and they hired someone to overturn that conviction. And I asked the management, so you paid, I remember the man, $300,000 or something. What did you actually pay for? And they didn't pay, oh, I don't know, but he did a good job, that he managed to do it. I was like, okay, I know that, but how did he actually achieve that? And they couldn't account for that. Yeah? So you're fully responsible, you need to understand each of the activities that your people do, your external people, agents, lobbyists, what they do for you, and the risk that could entail for your company.
Mogoče ena malenkost tudi v Luki Koper, če se spomnite, so pred leti bile kar velike afere in dejansko smo kar fajn slabili bilance po vseh teh zadevah in čistli. Zaradi potem vseh teh sprememb uprav je težko potem sestaviti ponovno nek soliden poslovni sistem, ampak v zadnjih letih nam dejansko to uspeva. Tudi rezultate lahko vidimo, da so iz leta v leto kar rekordni, zato ker smo kar močno prisotni na globalnih trgih in poslovno usmerjeni. In tudi na tem etičnem kodeksu smo v zadnjem letu veliko naredili, na strategiji korporativnega upravljanja. Nova je politika nabav, tudi pravilnik za poslovna darila, tako da veliko delamo ravno na temu, da bi postavili poslovni sistem čim bolj močen in da bi imeli vse možne notranje kontrole, da ukolikor bi prišlo do novih podobnih tendenc, da bi dejansko sam sistem se uspel čim bolj zavarovati in tiste, ki bi potencialno želeli karkoli kontra interesom družbe početi, da bi jih že sam sistem in sistemske mehanizmi na to opozorili.
Zdaj, počasi se že oblikuje, ne, osnovno vprašanje danes, kdo je lastnik sistemne skladnosti, v čigavi interesni sistemi sploh delujejo. Gospa Črtalič je prej rekla, da žvižgači delujejo v interesu podjetja. Tudi gospod Trstenak je prej, ko sem ga vprašal, kdaj pride, kakšna je odločitev, ko pride do ugotovitev v konkretnem primeru, da se usede in se pogovori o tem, kaj je najboljša rešitev v interesu podjetja. Dajmo zdaj definirati, kaj pa je to interes podjetja. Sploh, recimo, to bilo zanimivo v primeru Luke Koper. Ali je interes podjetja interes lastnikov, je to interes uprave, interes nadzornikov ali interes delavcev, predvsem recimo žrejovodje.
Načeloma bi mogel biti interes lastnikov, sigurno. Ker pa tudi predstavniki...
Zdaj, ko sem naštel te kategorije, to so samo personificirane oblike nosilcev interesa. Zakaj pa je tisti dejanski interes? Jaz prepričan, če vprašam recimo tam doktora Demana, kaj je interes podjetja, ne vem sicer, bo rekel to dobiček ali če večji prihodek, ampak nekaj v tem smislu bo. Pa kaj je res interes podjetja?
Ena bolj tako simpatična, mogoče. V zadnjih letih je večkrat se srečuješ z ljudmi in te vprašaš, kdo pa zdaj sploh, kdo ti je nadrejeno, kdo ti je vodja. In potem rečeš, samo lahko še Luka Koper. Za koga delaš? Za Luka Koper, ker se dejansko tako hitro so bile menjave, da smo se bolj poistovetili, vsaj nekateri, z družbo kot tako in z njeno uspešnostjo in z njeno dolgoročno naravnanostjo, kot pa s tem, kdo ti daje navodila. Ker dejansko ti veš, da kaj je strateški interes družbe, kaj so cilji in če je to dovolj močno nastavljeno, načeloma bi se lahko sistem sam sebe zaščitil. No? Tako, zdaj, kdo je tisti, ki daje, v čigavem interesu delamo, zaposlenim sigurno interesu, da so čim bolj dolgoročno stabilna delovna mesta, da imamo čim več od tega, da družba preživi še več generacij, da tudi okolje dobi nekaj tega, seveda država kot lastnik in drugi lastniki. Tako da dejansko je en balans vsega skupaj. Bolj konkretno težko.
Gospod Trstenak, zelo tehnično vprašanje. Ko se vi, recimo, sedete pa se odločite o tem, kaj boste storili s konkretno zadevo, katere elemente vse vzamete v upoštev?
Predvsem dejstva. Pregledajo se vsa dejstva, upravijo se potrebni razgovori. Če mene vprašate, to mora biti interes vseh lastnikov, nadzornikov, vodstva in pa vsaka posameznika, ki dela v tem podjetju. Saj le ena taka skupina ljudi lahko tvori eno močno družbo, ki jo take stvari, ki pridejo ali pa se zaznajo, ne, bom rekel, destabilizira.
Dominik, business interest of a company, can we deduct it down to, let's say, the economic success of the company, or is it something more?
It's not easy, because I'm afraid that we'll have example where, I don't know if you say vice industry, you know, prostitution, crime, tobacco use, alcohol, makes more money maybe that a company who manufacture cars. Bon. So, how long and I think, of course, it addressed the shareholders, and we know that now we have to inform in all detail through our document, annual report about our policy, and to be able to demonstrate that our company has full compliance. We need to be full compliant today with the bank. This is new. We did now to explain to the bank that the export is perfectly right, at the right product to the right destination, and without no corruption and so on. We know that more and more our employees said, no, I don't want to jeopardize my resume because I work in a company which has been. So we say, but I think it's also your responsibility. I'm very sorry, when you buy a very little superb little skirt, that you pay 15 euro, it stinks. It means it has been manufactured in Bangladesh by, I don't know, by children in dreadful places. So we have also all together, including our other citizens, to say, no, I don't accept, I will not buy this little skirt. I don't need maybe to buy a new iPhone number 8 or 9, because it does not yet exist, but which is manufactured. You know how it's manufactured. So I think it's a global approach as a citizen, as a bank, as a shareholder, as an employee, that, and I would like government at the end to say, yes, integrity is a competitive advantage. If your product does not respect environmental issues, human rights, anti-corruption, it's not allowed to be imported in my company. Up to now, we have opened our borders to any product. So I think it's a global approach. There is a lot that a big company must pay attention. As I explained, large company now must be careful, and we introduce all these. But tomorrow, I think it will become really a political issue. It will be a political for us, and for all our stakeholders. I think so. Drago, do you? I would like just to add one idea. Today, the issue we are concerned, which are fraud, which are terrorism, which are disease like AIDS, or which is global warming, and so on. All these problems we are facing are more and more global. It's called for the planet. It's planet. It's not anymore inside the border of your country. Now it's completely global issues, more and more. And to deal with this more and more global problem, you have more and more countries. You know that, do you know that when the UN, United Nations, has been created in 1945, there was 50 countries around the table. Now there is 193 countries. So you have more and more global problem, and you have more and more countries with short-term vision, political issue, and so on, which have absolutely not, and you explain why United Nations doesn't work. But l'amoureux, you forget. Business. Business is global, business is rich, business is more or less effective, business is long-term vision. Why you don't ask business to address the issue of the planet? Okay? And now business has to deal with human rights, business has to deal with fighting against corruption, and maybe, and next, the business will have to deal with education, art, the war and the peace, and oh la la, I'm a little afraid. Business is doing just to manufacture and sell products, that's all. We are not, business is not moral, business has no value. Business is just, can be ethical, but that's all. And just the idea between this transfer of responsibility from government to business, yes, but how you use transparency, you use reporting, you use whistleblowing, to put the pressure on reputation, on individual company reputation. And I think it's something wrong. Companies are not moral, they are amoral. We can be ethical, to pay attention to integrity, but not wrong. And I think there is a problem now. We are today, I don't know who is transferring. Mr. Ban Ki-moon, you see, the General Secretary of UN, last year, in a speech, we're calling about business for peace, business for education, business for... Business, it's not the role of business. This is the role of government. And I think, sorry, I'm not a politician and I don't want to be the president of the French Republic. So, I don't, no, definitively not. But what I was saying, it's as a citizen, we have to ask our government to fight against human rights, to fight against corruption, passive corruption, to fight against so on. Sorry for this.
No, but it's okay.
That's important.
What is important is you told us what is not interest of the company, so which is also good. So, back to my original question, what were they afraid of?
I think it can vary, but most management are concerned about performance of the company, their financial results, basically shareholder value. And some might think that this will be an interruption to their normal business, so their performance will suffer. In some cases, they think that even confirming that they do an investigation, for example, the antitrust authorities could do a raid on their business premises, and they're afraid to even start an investigation because they think that will confirm to someone that they have an issue, or they're guilty. And but I think overall it's the performance, and that could be the company's performance, but it could also be the individual manager's performance and their reputation. And the reputation is any company's, any individual's main asset anyway. So once the reputation suffers, businesses and individuals fail.
This is, you agree, this is a very short-sighted view. It's very short-sighted. Kar je pomembno je to, da zagotovo recimo če compliance sistemi za skladnost ugotovijo določene nepravilnosti v firmi, je jasno, da se znajo zgoditi določene kratkoročne negativne posledice teh ugotovitev. Vzemimo samo slovenske banke. Ko so slovenske banke lotile pač z različne intenzivnosti, pa z različno resnostjo odkrivanja pa raziskovanja bančne luknje, najboljše za njih bi bilo ne povedati nič, ne storiti nič, ker potem nič ne bi niti vedel, da je ostala kakšna bančna luknja, pa bi karavana šla mirno dalje. Tako so morali banke za vse te slabe kredite so morale oblikovati rezervacije, kar je v nekaterih primerih pomenilo celo to, da so banke seveda končale leto z negativnimi poslovnimi rezultati. Dolgoročno seveda bi bilo pa samo morilsko od bank, če se tega ne bi lotile, ker bi ostali isti ljudje, ki so zadeve peljali tako, kot si peljali 10, pa celo 20 let, na položajih pa bi peljali stvari še naprej. Bi ta luknja bila samo večja. O tem govori. Se pravi, zna se zgoditi, da bo nekatere določene zadeve kratkoročno imele celo ekonomsko negativni učinek na podjetje samo. Kar se reputacije tiče tako in tako, sploh recimo v majhnem okolju kot v Sloveniji, bo stvar zelo slabo videti. Ampak, ko govorimo o pravem interesu podjetja, seveda govorimo o dolgoročnem interesu podjetja, ki ga seveda sestavlja ekonomski rezultati, sestavlja tudi varnost delovnih mest, ki je seveda še kako odvisna od ekonomskih rezultatov, pa sestavljajo tudi pravice ljudi, ki v tem podjetju delajo. To se sliši malo tako romantično, ampak tako je. Moramo gledati na dolgoročne učinke tega, kar počnemo ali pa kar počnete v vaših sistemih za skladnost, ker kratkoročno zna res dobiti občutek, da stvar škodi, prej škodi, ko pa koristi. Evo, naslednjo, prosim.
Hvala. Vprašanje, kdo je lastnik, kaj je interes podjetja, tudi vprašanje politike nasproti interesov podjetja. Naprimer, ali ima podjetje urejen možne nasprotje interesov med različnimi deležniki, naprimer lastniki, vodstva, zaposleni, okolje, splošna javnost in včasih pa ne, imajo opredelitev nasproti interesov kot samo vloga posameznega zaposlenega, ampak ne nujno, kaj pa če je obstaja konflikt interesov med podjetjem sam in vlado ali skupnostjo.
Čudovito. Največ v normalnem podjetju, v normalnem okolju sploh ne bi smelo biti. Lastnik ne bi mogel imeti drugačnega interesa, kot ga imajo podjetje. Zdaj ne bom govoril recimo o nekaterih menih variantah, pa zagotovo imamo pri nas, smo imeli, pa imamo vlade, ki v podjetja pošiljajo uprave, ne zato, da bi izboljšali ekonomsko učinkovitost podjetja, pa da bi podjetje čim bolj poslovalo, zato, da bi ta vlada, ta politika, ta politična stranka, ki je vodi določeno vlado, imela od tega neko korist, ki ni nujno zakonita. Seveda potem prihaja do tega konflikta interesov. Zato vprašanje še kako na mestu. Would anybody like to comment? Maybe this is the same situation for you, Per, and for you, Dominic, that the owners of the company would have different interests as the company itself. Now, this happens when, let's say, when the state owns the companies. Sometimes states have some other interest in the companies themselves. Yeah.
We've seen a few examples of that. I mean, one is fraud and integrity, corruption, but the other one is corporate responsibility. Dominic mentioned, human rights and environmental issues, and we've had several instances now, and more frequently in the last couple of years, where big investment companies have pulled out of certain companies because of lack of integrity or environmental issues. And there's also evidence showing that companies that take this seriously and take care of integrity, work against the corruption, also take care of the corporate responsibility and maybe pay their workers or suppliers a decent wage, they actually perform better in shareholder value as well over time. So that's again, evidence to what you said, that you can't just look at this from a very short-term perspective, but a longer-term perspective. And some of these investors recognize that now. So if there are weaknesses in the company's compliance systems and compliance in the broader, not just corruption and integrity, they benefit from that. So unfortunately, we've come a long way since I started with Forensic about 20 years ago, where compliance was a cost. They now see the actual value and the shareholder value from compliance and the way the companies act in the longer term.
Samo potrditev tega, ko je bil Siemens pred leti ujet v podkupovanju skoraj vseh držav, v katerih ima Siemens posluje, je potem moral plačati za to v 4 različnih jurisdikcijah 1,8 milijard evrov kazni. Seveda pa prišlo je seveda do zamenjave uprave pa tako naprej. In vprašanje, ki je mene vedno mučilo, je bilo to, kaj se je zgodilo potem. Namreč 1,8 milijarde evrov je bilo samo polovica kazni, ker ostalo polovice kazni je pa Security Exchange Commission v Združenih državah Amerike Siemens odpustil pod pogojem, da bodo vsako leto investirali določeno vsote denarja v compliance, v protikorupciju in tako naprej. Ampak kar je mene zanimalo, so bili poslovni rezultati potem. In sem vprašal kolega, ki je zdaj šef compliance v Siemensu, sem rekel, poslušajte, do danes ste podkupovali, od danes naprej pa ne več. Ali se vam je to poznalo na poslovnih rezultatih? Je rekel, ja, boljši poslujemo. Vsi čekajte malo, zakaj boste bolj podkupovali? Ja, je rekel, tako pač so nekateri mislili, da brez tega se ne da delati posel. Ravno Siemens, ki se je iz grdega črnega račka spremenil v belega laboga, ker so zastavo noše na tem področju danes, dokazuje, da se je etika splača. Seveda, neki drugi je tako ogromen sistem kot je Siemens. Siemens, seveda, predvsem v manjših državah, se lahko tudi na dokaj močne pogajalske pozicije postavijo, ko se treba pogovarjati tudi za vladami. Tega slovenska podjetja vse večina ni še ne more. Ampak v vsakem primeru, dolgoročno, mislim, da je več kot očitno, da se to splača. Seveda, hudiče samo v tistem času, ki mine od dneva, ko mi odkrijemo eno stvar, ko jo preiščemo, ko spravimo odgovorne osebe do odgovornosti, bodi se to delovnopravno, bodi se to disciplinska, bodi se dekanska, do takrat, ko se to obrne, pa mi dobimo pozitivne trende. Ker ta vmesni čas je pa tisti, ki je problematičen. V vmesnem času pa vsi vi, ki delate v sistemih za skladnost, boste pa srečali ježa. Ampak to ne more biti izgovor za to, da se to ne bi dogajalo. Gospa Črtalič, videl sem, da ste kimali, pravi pomeni, da se strinjate z mano.
Ja, vsekako. Jaz sem razmišljala komentar, da bi mogli biti interesi lastnikov enaki dejansko interesu družbe oziroma vseh ključnih deležnikov za uspešnost poslovanja, za dolgoročni razvoj in tako. Ko smo aktivni tudi po Evropi, slišiš dejansko pristanišča kot neke strateške točke držav imajo tudi nekatera težave s podporo držav. Recimo v Italiji Rim enkrat podpira Trst, enkrat Benetke, enkrat Genovo, tako da je logično, da vsakič pač nekdo dobi podporo. V Španiji tudi enkrat Valencia, enkrat Barcelona, pač odvisno spet od nekih političnih opcij. In vsem pa je naravno, da Slovenija, glede na to, da ima eno Luko in Koper, da vedno je to podpora popolna. In ko kdaj poveš, da pač ni, ne, da ni tako logična ta podpora, so potem vsi začudeni. Ne. In enostavno ni. Ne.
Tam imamo vprašanje.
I don't think I need a mic. Anyone can hear me, I think. I'm actually a student here, but I have a question in regards to policy. Now, you mentioned the 1.8 billion penalty to Siemens, and my question is, does intensive financial penalization of corruption sort of disincentivize internal investigation where companies that when they do uncover corruption within themselves that companies might not be familiar with, are sort of disencouraged to make it public or investigate as they are under threat of receiving these penalties? And are there any policies in place that would sort of encourage a leniency towards the company if they deal with the problem internally to as large an extent as possible?
Well,
that goes mostly for the representatives of, let's say, the company as well as Mr.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think there's one clear or correct answer to that, but I'm not sure if the penalties alone would have that effect, but it's part of it. I think some companies may turn a blind eye because they're naive and in the short term it's easier to forget about it, but I think our experience is that sooner or later this will come to the surface. In the US there are rules, and I think they're more formalized now as well. If you self-report, you may get some benefits. So if you are in deep trouble, I mean, there's a part of that saying that if you self-report, the penalty, both for the company as well as for the individuals, may be more lenient than if other people find out. So, yeah, the cost will certainly have some impact, but I think it's just part of a bigger picture. So I don't think it scares them. I'm actually quite confident that the penalties and the, not just the money, but the jail sentences as well, have a better deterrent effect on things happening than a deterrent effect on the investigations being conducted.
What some countries are trying to do is basically they're trying to, let's say, to take into consideration the effective compliance systems when deciding on sanctions. So if you go to the US, you will find in the federal sentencing guidelines that if company has effective compliance system in place, this is a mitigating circumstance. Italy, UK, Chile, Peru, if the company has effective compliance system in place, they can even come to an end of the proceedings without being sanctioned for corruption which has happened. But this is not enough. You see, if I'm the CEO of a company, I really don't like to invest millions sometimes. So I don't know how's your budget, Dominique, but for sure it's a huge one. I would not like to invest millions of euros into something which might happen someday, and then when it will happen, only the sanction will be, let's say, decreased. What we need to tell the companies, including companies in Slovenia, is if you do it, you'll get positive motivation. So for the moment we are thinking, in the OECD, we are thinking about, let's say, introducing systems like the following ones. If you have effective compliance system in place, only you can take part in public procurement systems. If you don't have it, you don't deal with the state. Or, let's say, a bit milder version is, if you have it in place, then you get extra points in the public procurement system. But the problem is that the government do not trust the companies. So the governments, for the time being, do not want to agree to the system. They are willing to, let's say, to be a bit lenient with sanctions, but they're not willing yet to give positive motivation. Yeah.
Just one other comment as well. One big risk if you spot some red flags and if you don't act. One is to keep quiet about things in the past, but if you spot weaknesses in your compliance system and do not remediate, when in the future you get caught, that, including for the individuals, for management, will be a personal liability. So, one is to keep quiet about things that have happened, but if you don't take action then to fill those gaps going forward. And management are increasingly aware of this. I think there was a question earlier about the personal liability, but we do see now more jail sentences in Norway. I mean, some of the main corruption cases, I'm Norwegian, there are being jail sentences dealt out for corruption cases now. So we're seeing more of that, and that they are aware, and that's also why people like Dominic and our clients now, it's not easy, but it's easier than it was before to actually get any budget for compliance. Before they had that personal liability, so-so.
Dominic, what's your budget?
No, yes, it's not enough. Of course, it's not big enough to. No, it's what is more important is the feeling that because of Dominic, we lose money and we lose business, and because we are not allowed to have this or such project because there is definitively a risk of bribery and corruption. No, I think to just to answer a different question, it's very important to say that there is so many different situations in the world between the different companies. You said about a totally private old company in a non-democratic country. Can do anything, it doesn't mind, it's that. A palace, why we have been so pushy, because we, as I said, we are so global, we have been seen by so many different stakeholders that we have to pay attention. It's complex. I think what we are today, first, it's a very new movement. You imagine that the convention, the OECD convention, has been put in force only 16 years ago. 16 years ago? So it's very, very short. Of course, it depends on what freedom, democracy, freedom of press, request from the liberty of press, of media, and so on. So you have so many different countries in the world. So you have this new trend, plus technology. And I think there is a mix of new technology, social network, internet, smartphones, and what we see is country with freedom, democracy, request for more, we said, notoriety, image, better behavior, etc., plus the technology, is what makes things go ahead. And so I think that in 10 years, the same discussion here will be completely different because everything will expand. But it's a trend. What I want to say, we are under a trend. It's quite fascinating.
Imamo točno še eno minuto. Bom počasi pripeljali stvari do konca. Več čas govorimo o tem, da so sistemi za skladnost delujejo v interesu podjetja. Rekli smo tudi, kaj vse bi lahko ta interes podjetja bil. Zdaj, nismo pa rekli pa nečesa pomembnih, še nečesa pomembnih. Sicer, ali je v interesu podjetja tudi, kdaj, to pa vprašanje za naša slovenska gosta, tudi to, da se kateri od zadev, ki jih obravnavajo njihovi oddelki, sektori, kakorkoli že, da se tudi objavijo, da za njih izve javnost. Če da, kaj je kriterij pri tem, gospod Trstenjan?
Ja, v tem času, teh 13 let, odkar se srečujemo z temi zadevami, moram reči, da nikdar nismo v Petrolu nastopili zunanjosti, da bi jih seznanili z nekimi ugotovitvami preiskave. Gre za interno zadevo in zadeve so preobčutljive, da bi jih delili z javnostjo.
Čekali, če bo proskaj drugače.
Ne, tudi mi dejansko probamo čim bolj zaščititi poslovne skrivnosti in enostavno določenih zadev ne moramo kar tako objavljati.
Seveda, to prihaja do trka, do dveh interesov. Interesa javnosti, da je obveščena, pa do interesa podjetja, da ščiti svoje poslovne interese. Zdaj, jaz bi rekel, tako se načelno strinjam s tem, kar ste goste rekla, znam si pa predstavljam tudi situacije, čeprav redke, kadar bi bilo v interesu podjetja, da javnost izve. Zakaj? Zdaj, v Petrolu pa v Luki Koper do takšnega primera še ni prišlo, Ampak v takšnem primeru bi jaz, če bi jaz recimo direktor podjetja, zagotovo z mirne duše blagoslovil, da mi tudi učimo obvestimo javnost. Zdaj, v večini primerov, v katerih gre v Sloveniji, je pa takšno, da so podjetja prisiljena v to, ker pač ali podatki pridejo od zunaj, ob možnih kršitvah in se potem morajo podjetja angažirati, ali pa podatki nekontrolirano odtekajo znotraj, se potem podjetja morajo braniti in potem se postavijo podjetja v defenzivni položaj in morajo pač skrbeti za svoj ugled in to, da ugled pa svoje aktivnosti dokazati tudi z ukrepi na področju skladnosti. Ampak samo iniciativno je po moje odgovor jasen. Če je to interese podjetja, da, drugače pa niti ne.
Se strinjam, tle treba podariti eno stvar, tako kot ste omenili. Bistveno je, kaj bomo s tem dosegali. Ali bomo vsako podjetje regulivo in neželena ravnanja se dogajajo povsod. Kakšen signal damo s tem zunanjemu svetu? Da ne vladujemo ali poskrbimo znotraj podjetja s takimi službami, kot je od kolegice pa pri meni, da tega ne pride. Dajmo komunicirati to, kako dobro so organizirani, kako skrbimo za integriteto, kakšni so naši poslovni modeli, kako so učinkoviti. Povemo, ne zakrivamo si oči, ali pa ne zatiskamo si oči pred dejanji, ki pride do njih, tako da ja, vedno pridemo do tega trka, kaj je za podjetje boljše. Ali peremo umazano perilo zunaj, pa dobimo negativno publiciteto, ali zadevo ne damo pod preprogo, ampak jo obravnavamo skladno z vrednotami, strategijami, ki so zapisane na tem področju. Seveda, jaz bi dodal vsi tisti, ki se s tem ukvarjate. Pri nas je ključno vprašanje ne ali je zakonito, temveč ali je prav. To je ključnega pomena.
Tukaj sem dal, da je treba ločiti dve podjetji. Eno je podjetje, ki odlično posluje, drugo je podjetje, ki je v krizi. Ker v podjetju, ki si v krizi, moraš opustiti stvari, ki so bile narobe, zaradi tega, da si povrneš ugled kupcev. In v podjetju, ki odlično posluje, lahko to urediš z instrumenti, ki jih noter imaš. V podjetju, ki je v krizi, je pa treba odrezati kos poveče in povedati javnosti tisto, kar mora vedeti. Ker na ta način si povračaš ugled in poveš javnosti. Spreminjamo, obračamo novo stanje.
To je eno od razlogov, recimo, kateri bi štel, da je obveščanje javnosti v interesu podjetja. Ker to potem jasen znak presekali smo starimi praksami in gremo naprej. In to potem ima smisel. Drugače pa je pa zna biti problemov. Ok, hvala lepa vsem 4, vsem 5, Sara je dosti pomagala. Kdo je lastnik sistemov skladnosti? Podjetje. Če bi mi bili v idealnem sistemu, bi mi točno vedeli, kdo podjetje je. Ampak recimo, da podjetje se sestavljajo vsi deležniki in vsi njihovi interesi, ki so kolikor se da identični. Seveda, pustimo zdaj v strani, da včasih niso, sploh če je država lastnik, ampak sistemi skladnosti delujejo v interesu, dolgoročnem interesu podjetja. Ne posameznega vodstva, ne posameznega nadzornega sveta, ne posameznih lastnikov, pa niti ne posameznih delavcev, ampak podjetja. In če bomo vedeli to, bo mogoče kakšno naše bodoče srečanje z ježem manj boleče. Hvala lepa, pa se vidimo naslednjič.